everybody, Rich Basil here. It's a beautiful fall day, unfortunately. Why I say unfortunately, I was actually hoping for some clouds today. Had a pretty good sized storm come through last night. Checked the water levels, and I think things will be fishable today. So I'm heading up to the mountains, going to get it down to one of the delayed harvest rivers here in North Carolina, and we'll see how the Euronymphing is. So a couple things. It's always important to check water flows and water levels if you can. Get some idea before you go. If you can actually read the charts, most of them are available on the USGA website for the river that you're interested in. They give you predicted flows, they'll give you historical flows, and then they'll give you the current conditions. So I always like to see water levels that are coming down. That usually means things will be fishable. If water levels are going up, a lot of times the rivers will be muddy and really not fishable. It just really depends upon how much volume of rain there is. If it's just a little bit and they only go up a little bit, things will actually be great. But if they're going up on a really steep curve, when you look at those flows, then you might want to rethink what you're going to do that day. But in either case, it looks like it should be good, so we're going to give it a try. And today, what I think I'm going to do is to really work on casting and techniques that work here in North Carolina, because a lot of the Euronymphing videos out there really just talk about casting in wide open spaces, which we just don't have on our delayed harvest rivers here in North Carolina. So you got to change your techniques a little bit. I'm also going to try and see if I can concentrate on what my left hand is doing, because I watch a lot of people that are Euronymphing or learning how to Euronymph, and I realize that it's not just the casting, it's how do they manage their line after the cast that really limits their ability to detect strikes and to catch fish. I went recently with a few people that are new to Euronymphing and kind of watched them, and so this really kind of made me realize that I do a lot of things automatically now that I didn't do at the beginning, and it makes a huge difference. So let's get on the river here soon, and we'll see how it goes. But boy, it looks like a beautiful day. Okay, I mentioned earlier about stream flows. So this is a gauge map, or excuse me, a gauge graph of the stream flows close to where I'm going to be fishing. So a lot of times you can't actually find a gauge on the river that you're going to be fishing. So you can find a nearby stream, and you can see that each day it's been pretty flat. We had rain last night, and then the river flows went up to about 100 cubic feet per minute, and then they're dropping on down. So hopefully that means that the water is going to be fishable, and that's what I looked at this morning. So another app that I use a lot is this one up here called Rivercast. And the Rivercast app allows you to it shows you kind of where you are or where you're going, and then you can kind of find a gauge. Now I'm actually out of range right now, but you can then click on the gauge for where you're going, and it'll then give you the data, and you can plot it and you can look at it, etc. So it's another way of finding the gauges for rivers near where you're going to be fishing if you can't actually find the one that you're going to be fishing on. So I made it up to the river. The water does look a little bit off color, but definitely fishable. So I'm going to use this to all try and figure out what I'm going to also rig with. So it's not only a matter of, trying to figure out, if you can even fish, but also it gives you some idea of maybe what's going to work. So in general, when the water levels spiked like they did last night, and they're coming back down, that means that you know, there's a lot more water washing down through the banks of the river, and maybe picking up terrestrial insects and dropping them into the river that the fish might eat. The water temperature is about 54 degrees. We're kind of late October here now, so we're not really getting a lot of bug hatches anymore here in North Carolina. Usually you're going to be fishing smaller nymphs and paragons and midges and things like that, you know. But today, because of that big spike in water, maybe I'll put on, you know, some terrestrial kind of patterns and see how they do. Crickets and San Juan worms and things like that might be beneficial to at least try. So sometimes this kind of gives you an idea of maybe what might actually work as we rig up, and so we'll see what works. All right, so here we are down on the river. So first thing I do is just kind of look around and see, okay, I got trees above me, I got a big tree in front of me, I got a branch over here across the way, almost my rod tip away, got some bushes and things behind me. So I have to figure out how I'm gonna make my casts and stuff in here. And, you know, I do have some back room here, which is great. So, you know, kind of I feel like I can make a cast in through here and get my flies to land where I want. So one of the things I also want to emphasize is, as you cast, you want to try and pick out a spot that you want your flies to land in. And what I mean by that is, you know, in some places it doesn't really make too much difference. You're just casting into a general area which is pretty big and wide open. But if you pick a spot and start trying to aim for those spots, and every time you make a cast, whether it's in a big pool where there's no obstructions or in a really tight space, the more you practice hitting a spot, the more you're going to be able to hit spots that are tight when you have to hit a spot when it's tight. So practice those things early. I think that's really important. So I always pick out a spot that I want my flies to land. And then one of the mistakes that I see a lot of people do is, as they move their line back through the water, they just keep turning their body. They never use their left hand for anything other than just kind of holding the line. And they keep turning, they keep turning, they keep turning. And when they do that, the line starts out, when you make a cast upriver, the line starts out reasonably close to you. Then as you move your rod out, it gets farther away. And then as you start getting past here and coming back in with that rod tip, that line actually gets closer to you again, and you lose sensitivity when you do that. You really want to try and keep your rod out over the area that you're fishing, and use the left hand to bring in your line as your flies drift downriver. Makes kind of sense, but most people don't seem to get it. They don't do that. They just keep turning their body and keeping both of their hands together. So I'm going to make a few casts here, and we'll see how that works. So I got some line out. I'm going to make my cast, pick my spot, my flies hit the water, and I'm going to start drifting downriver. And if I don't move my hands, I'm trying to show you. Oh, actually, there's a fish, but if I don't move my hands, that line gets in close to me. Well, it's good to know anyway that I've got on something that works. It took the jig streamer, a little rainbow. So what I'd really like to do is to keep my rod tip reasonably stable. So I'm going to point the camera down more towards my hands so we can see what they do. I'll make my cast. Not a good cast, right? Make my cast, aim at my spot, get my drift going. And now I'm going to use my left. Oh, there's another fish. Picked it up right as soon as that hit the water. Whoa, nice jumper. All right, well, we'll have to watch my hands the next time round. I was going to show you two different techniques to manage that line coming in. Another nice little rainbow. Again, took the jig streamer. All right, so once again, we'll try it here. Make my cast. And now my flies are coming back. So I'm using my left hand now to bring in my line so that my rod tip stays over my target area without moving downriver very much at all. And this is called figure eighting. So you can figure eight your line in. All right, make my cast. So the other option is to just use your left hand to kind of pull the line through your finger and keep things steady. You see what my hand is doing there? I'm bringing my line all the way in as my flies come down river. The problem with that technique is that you can only bring in so much line before your hand gets too far away and you lose control. So again, I'm trying to stay reasonably steady, getting rid of that extra line as I come down river. But after a while, it gets way out here, so then I have to re-grasp and do it again. And so there's a little momentary problem where you lose contact. Whereas if you figure eight the line in, you can keep that nice and steady the whole, oh, there was a bite, missed it. You can keep it nice and steady the whole time. Let's try that again. All right, let's try it one more time. All right, so there's the inside seam. So with this figure eighting technique, there was a bite. With this figure eighting technique, I can keep my indicator pretty much where I want it, nice and stable, keep good contact with my flies, and I'm constantly bringing in the line so that way my hands stay nice and steady over the water and I can feel those strikes very delicately. The problem with figure eighting is that when you get out into a lot of current, you've got to do it a lot. Oh, that's a good fish there. You got to do it a lot. Actually, I might have him snagged. That's the reason he felt bigger than he was. I'm pretty sure I do. Hopefully I won't break him off. See if I can get him over this channel of water here. I thought he was a big fish, but I think I got him by the tail. All right, I got to get through this current here and get him in here where I can hopefully land him. He is a good fish, but unfortunately snagged, which happens. So I'm gonna get out some line here because when he gets close, I want to be able to let go and not break my rod tip. All right, let's see if I can get him up here now. He is not happy. Oh, I got lucky. He swam right into the rod. But you see, when I hooked him, I let go of my line right away, so I didn't put a lot of pressure on my rod tip. Okay, we'll get him back in the water quickly. Okay, so again, contact with your flies, make your cast, get your flies hitting the water first, pick up right away, follow it downriver, catch up to your flies. And, you know, again, I'm figure eighting, trying to keep things steady so my flies stay out where I want them. And then I can redo my cast right away. I got a little back eddy in there, so I'm gonna jig it through there. Try it again. Flip my flies out, contact with them right away. Figure eight. Keeping my rod tip nice and steady over the water. Again, we'll do it one more time. So this water's off color, so I'm gonna make lots of casts. Just because in really clear water, there was a bite. In really clear water, the fish will see it, and you know that the fish see it. But here in this dark, dingy water, they may not see it on any particular cast. You may have to make a few casts and try and see. But always strip in that line. Use either figure eight to kind of do it, or if the water's fast, that was a bite. If the water's fast, like you get out in the current out there, you know, then I do tend to use my left hand to just strip in the line to try and keep up with my flies as much as possible. So I'm always in contact with them. What you don't want to do is cast your flies in the water and let all that line just lay on the water like that, and then you start moving your flies and you know, nothing happens. Actually, there's a little tiny one. Took the San Juan worm. So again, try and keep your flies moving and stay in contact with them. As soon as they hit the water, bam, you want to be fishing. Because a lot of times those bites will happen right as soon as the flies hit the water, especially in this faster kind of water. So flies up in the air, hit the water, bam, I'm fishing right away. And then I'm moving my line in with my left hand, either figure eighting it in or stripping it in. Okay, so here is when practicing some of these casts at home, in your backyard, or when it's really easy, starts paying off, because now you can kind of say, all right, I need to cast right in front of that rock, behind that rhododendron. There's a little pool, maybe holds a fish, but I got to get my cast in there and not get hung up in all these trees. So that's where your practice pays off, right? So again, we're going to try and aim our cast in there, try and drop it in, and then follow our cast right away and see what we can do. So one of the things I like to do in this situation when I have fast water behind me is to just let my flies touch the water and just kind of drag there in the fast current. That gives me a feel for where my flies are, and I can line up my cast exactly where I want it. And that way, when my flies hit the water, I'm ready to cast. I'm looking around, making sure there's nothing high, so I know I can make a high cast. And what I want to do here is I don't want I'm going to pull this in real quick. I don't want my rod tip to go all the way down like that, because then my line is going to lay on the water and I'm going to miss that first few seconds of when those flies hit the water. So what I'm going to do is make my cast, but I'm going to stop my cast, my rod tip up here, and allow my flies to kind of flip and lay over and drop into the hole where I want them to go. Hopefully not get into the rhododendrons. So it's better to be a foot short than a foot long. So you just have to kind of really practice this. But if you notice, my rod tip's going to stop up here. My flies are going to continue over the top of my rod, drop into the hole, and then go. And that way, I'm ready to fish right away. So my rod flies hit the water first, a little short of where I want it to be. So next time I'm going to let out a little bit more line when I set up my cast. Still a little bit short of where I want to be, but there's a fish.
And you can see how fast after that fly hit the water that fish hit. All right? So if you didn't do that, you probably would not have caught that fish. Nice little rainbow. And again, I didn't get too close to my pool, but this water's off color today, so I don't have to make really long casts. Uh-oh, dropped my net. Oh no! We'll have to edit that. All right, let's get back into action here. All right, let's see if we can land this guy here. He does not want to come in. Nice little rainbow though. And again, I'm trying to just keep him in this calm water here. Strip in a bit more. He's tiring out. And we can land him safely. All right. So I'm just going to let him go. And we'll reset. Now the other thing you can do is to sometimes just swing your flies in. You've seen me do this before, where it's a really tight pocket and there's not a lot of room to do any kind of back cast. I'll just swing my flies and drop them in right where I want them. And that way I can check these little holes and spots. Look at that. That you normally wouldn't otherwise fish, all right? So there's a good example. Getting in back in this little hole in here. Nobody goes back in there. It's hard to fish. You could throw a little line down in there and pick one up. Great example of that. Okay, so here's another example of a place that's kind of really tough to get into, right? We got sticks in the front. We got the tree down, but it's a nice little hole in there. And yes, I could probably make my cast coming in traditionally and try and throw it in, but if I really want to get in right underneath that stick in there, it's easier for me just to kind of take my flies back and forth and then drop them in right where I want them, and then I can work my flies downriver and see if anybody's home. And again, I can get right in underneath that branch this way. And I'm fishing right away. And then if out there, I can do a little bit more traditional cast. So I can take my flies and just flip them in and be ready to fish right away. Again, using my left hand to move my flies downriver, keeping in contact with them all the way. Nobody home. So I'm gonna move over here and I'm gonna do another flip cast just because I can really get it up to the top of that pool a little bit better and see if I can control it a little bit better. See if anybody's home. Whoa, that was a little close. Got a little hang up there. Way up to the top. And I don't think anybody's home. But anyway, I can fish this without taking a lot of chances. There's a fish, little one. Without taking a lot of chances, I can get up into that little tight spot and catch a fish, right? So again, modify your cast. Try and figure out, how do I get my fly in the water? How do I stay in contact with my flies all the time? There's no right way or wrong way to do all this. It's really just what works for the given situation. Okay, so here's a wide open pool. I've got nothing really above me. I can make any kind of cast I want. So I can really here concentrate on picking out a target and trying to cast to that spot And what I'm going to do is start close to me. Yes, the sweet spot is probably out there in the middle, but I don't want to miss this stuff that's close. So always fish close and then move out, okay? Then the other thing that I see a lot of people struggling to do is to try and get their flies to land where they want to. And what I mean by that is, if I want my flies to land out here by this log or a little bit after that log in that shallower water by that rock, I can't start with my flies back behind me, because when I cast from here, my flies are going to want to go out there, okay? So if I want to cast there, I have to start with my flies kind of downriver from that spot, and it's a straight line from where my flies are going to start to my rod tip to my target. So if I want to come in close, I start out there and I can come in close. If I want to go out far, I got to start back here with my flies back over here, and then I can go from my rod tip out deep. So you set yourself up for where you're going target wise by trying to figure out exactly where your flies are going to start. So I see a lot of folks kind of go, I don't know why I can't get out there. They throw their flies out and then they try and cast out that way, and it goes upriver. It doesn't go across like they want to. If you want to go across, you got to get your flies behind you, and then you can throw them out and go across, okay? So that's kind of one of the things you got to really work on, is that vectoring of the flies. There's a fish. He was out in the sweet spot, kind of where I thought he might be. But in either case, I was trying to demonstrate the casting. Nice little rainbow. We'll get them in here. Try and keep them out of that pool so we don't scare any others that might be up in there. I'm gonna strip in a bit so that way I have some free line when he comes in. Keep him upriver of me if I can. Keep him upriver of me. Pick him up. Good fish. There we go. Whew, got him hooked good. All right. Let's see if we can let him go. Nice little rainbow. Try not to touch him too much. All right, let's go back and try that again. So again, what I was trying to say, if I want to cast there, I'm going to start out with my flies out in the river, kind of out there, and then I can make my flip cast upriver and get it right behind my log and swing my flies where I want to. All right, so again, I can flick them out, and then I can get my target area where I want to, fish that area close in, and see if there's anything in close before I start going out deep. So again, I can make I got any kind of cast I want to do here. I can water load it, but I can try and get my angles set up so I fish the shallow water first. See if anybody's home. And then I can start moving my flies back a little bit and fishing the deeper water out here as need be. So now if I want to get out further in the water, I start a little bit closer to the bank, and then I can make my flies go out away from the bank. Oh, there's a fish. They are really liking the black jig streamer today. Woo! That's a little bit more manageable fish here. Nice little stalker. Boom. Okay, so I'm gonna try and get my cast up here into this faster water. I'm gonna be using my left hand to retrieve line to try and keep my rod tip level and stable, and at the same time my indicator at a stable position above the water so I can detect even the slightest strike. So I'm gonna tip down so you can see my hands fly behind me so I can get my cast out into the deeper water. And then we're gonna start stripping in, stripping in, stripping in. There's a fish. Oh, I missed him. Okay, try it again. Cast. Figure eighting my way in. Oh, that was a leaf. Okay, felt like a fish, but it was a leaf. So I'm gonna set up again, get my cast. And again, this is reasonably slow water moving in here, so I can, ooh, there was a fish, there's a fish. So again, just figure eighting my way in, keeping that rod tip stable, indicator right at the water level. Nice little rainbow. So with this water being a little off color, I don't have to make giant long casts really far away from me. I can actually just fish off the indicator and not make a big cast. So I'm just gonna be dropping my flies in, keeping an eye on my indicator. Left hand is moving my line in. And I'm trying to detect even the slightest strike or movement of my indicator. And I'm gonna kind of work my way across this pool. And when I get below me a little bit, then sometimes I'll actually turn the flies over and jig it a little bit upstream. So I'm really just been dead drifting for the most part, but now I'm gonna start giving the flies a little action. So after a few drifts, dead drifting, give the flies a little action, turn them over, see if you get somebody on the swing. Sometimes you pick some up that way. Now I wanna get out behind that rock over there, so I'm gonna start my flies in behind me over here. And then I can fly my flies right out by that rock and fish a spot that I hadn't fished. So we can try and see if there's anybody at home over there. Like that. There's a good fish. Got him jigging. So again, I went across the river, a little bit of a jig. Nice fish. Again, these are all kind of stock rainbows, but they're pretty good. See if we can get him up here quickly. Get him over into the shallower water where I can control him a bit. Oh, he's pretty strong though. With these 2X rods, it is a little bit of a battle though. You can't horse the big ones. There we go. All right. And again, we're trying not to touch the fish too much. Keep them happy. There we go. There's a fish. he's off. Gentleman's release. Again. Alright, so we'll try out a bit. Across the way. Figurating in. Little jig. Dead drift, little jig. Ooh, little jig, I was gonna say. Maybe a hit. Hit it on the fall. There's a fish. So I really love fall fishing. It's not sweaty. The only thing you got to deal with is a lot of leaves and stuff in the water. And a little feistier fish too. Nice little rainbow. All right, so flipped one out by those rocks there. And sure enough, now that the weather's kind of turned a little bit, got a big brown to hit. Nice. Love big browns, as you guys know. That was a great take, too. It barely hit the water. Just a flip cast. I just kind of, actually cross stream, almost downstream. Look at him go. Wow. He is not happy. It's a big old fish there. Really did not expect that. But I'll take it. Woo! See if I can land him over here in this quiet water. Nice brown. He just smashed it. He might be a little while still. I got him hooked good though. Oh, almost got him. Let's try one more circle. Hopefully I'll get him this time around. Let me shorten up here a little bit. There he is. Nice big old brown. Ow. Got some sharp teeth on him. There he goes. Great fish. There's a fish. He was right in that little groove, right there. Just almost at the rod tip. Goes. That was pretty sweet. All right, so been a good day, caught lots of fish actually. I'm gonna try and target some big browns now. It's about 4 o'clock. It's been cloudy most of the afternoon. I think the big predator should be starting to prowl. We'll see how this goes.